So go back, talk in English. We're in Frankfurt. Everything we do is going via public internet to our Swedish data center, which is based in Piteå. Pretty far north. As you can see, it's 2,300 kilometers public internet, all the way up and all the way down. I'm just checking, my network looks good, everything is green. I have my encoder, which is over here, and that has two inputs. One is SDI, which is the camera, so I can switch between the camera signal and my PowerPoint. And we'll see what we can use that for. It's kind of remote mixing and things like that. In addition, we have friends, and the friends are Solid Tango in Sweden, and we're doing a stream. And that same stream is actually on my smartphone. So if you like, you can have it on your smartphone as well. So we're using one contribution feed. We pull it back. We can use it as a TV signal. We can go web streaming, and we can have it on smartphones and mobile devices. So that's kind of the idea. And let me switch to my presentation. Yeah, so that's kind of a claim we have. Make it easy to broadcast live via the internet. So I thought it's important to understand a little bit what equipment is used, and that this is real public internet transport from here up to Sweden. We're just coming back from the IBC show, and we've shown new things. And before you consider maybe going into Intinor, the question might be, where am I? What do I need to do? And that might be broadcast contribution. That might be distribution, that might be webcasting, or even the esports markets. Then in terms of internet connectivity, what do I get? Maybe DSL, VDSL. And VDSL is a very interesting aspect because I have to be adaptive. That's a very important key feature of our technology. We have to be adaptive when using VDSL because we don't know what we're getting. In addition, everybody knows on 3G, 4G, we do the bonding. So we have, let's say, a Vodafone, O2 Telefonica, and a Telecom SIM card in our systems. You see the antennas over here? So we combine the 4G SIM cards to a total of, let's say, whatever, 3 or 5 megabit. That's kind of the average I can get in Munich. That gives me a total of 10 to 15 megabits for the upstream. And that, everybody knows, can just disappear immediately. So we have to be adaptive again. In addition, there's a new spotter operated by Eutelsat Skylogic. That is a transponder using 5 carriers for an IP satellite connection used in the broadcast industry. That again is adaptive. So adaptive, adaptive, adaptive all the time. And we'll see how we use that and why that is so important. In addition, you want to be robust. You want to be packet loss free. That is kind of the goal we have to achieve when we have, TV channels going to a teleport. Another thing is interoperability. We have so many devices, technologies, protocols, etc. And we'll see what Intinor can do for you in that regard. In addition, quality-wise, we go up to 45 megabits, and everything has to be automated. Red Bull is using 5 of our systems in their SNGs. No technician needed. That was the overall goal to achieve. Okay, so that's kind of what's new at IBC. We now have a 2-rack unit encoder doing 2 1080p streams, which is used in the esports, but we can do as well virtual reality VR 360 streaming. Wonderworld VR is one of our customers just doing events in Paris and New York. It's a kind of a fashion show, I heard. They use our technology. In addition, for contribution, it's important to talk, communicate, intercom. We heard that before in the speeches. And on the direct router, I will have more slides and more features, how to use that. So that's the device I'm using today. You can have HDMI and SDI inputs, but the new product will have 2 SDI inputs, and I can actually have the bonding, talk back, and important, when doing a webcast, I can have an RTMP stream going to the web streaming platform / Akamai and SES services, whoever we can do the RTMP direct. So that's the interoperability slide, which is important for many broadcasters because we see several encoders out there. We see cameras doing streams, and the gray input lines you can see, that is kind of the pushing of streams. But in addition, we can do the opposite. We can pull a stream, which is very important. There's the Make TV platform. There's a product called Selector and Acquire that interfaces with the Avid world, and that can be live. So we can pull from a platform and output on our direct router, which is the blue device over here, and output as a stream. We could even convert the protocols. We can transcode or output on SDI. So that is the pull. The Wowza platform offers the same. There's a kind of a smartphone app that streams to a Wowza platform, and we can pull from there. And all of a sudden you have it in your MCR in the studio at the broadcaster. So that's the contribution side of things. Looking at the distribution, we again get clean feeds in. Swedish ice hockey is going from Ireland over to Slovakia, across Europe, all on IP level. So it's kind of a clean feed forwarding device, if you like. And that again is unicast, multicast in a local area network. That can be any YouTube, Facebook, Akamai streaming platform. And of course we're DVB compliant, so we have Ericsson as an example. And of course mobile devices, because we can see it here. So that's an example. 2 weeks ago there was a Call of Duty event in Los Angeles. That was a pull, an RTMP pull in the US. And then we had a kind of a safe transport from the US over to Europe, London. We output there again on SDI for the TV. And we can have the TCP protocol in between. And that's kind of we make it easy to broadcast live via internet. It's a packet loss free safe transport. And then we output as a stream again. So we can kind of, connect the continents. That's kind of the esports world. And the content again gets kind of rebroadcasted all over the world. They call it takers. I've done the same with ESL in Cologne, going to Sweden first, over to Miami, another router, and even Australia was pulling over public internet from the router in Miami. So these are applications that show a little bit what we do on public internet. I have a TV channel in Nigeria delivering to London, and we'll see more on that. This is an example, Olympics, Brazil, and that graph shows you a little bit how the adaptive stream looks like. It has to go up and down all the way. So you might see, we discussed this during the coffee breaks, you might see some internet going up and down at the upstream location. Could be a VDSL, we don't know what we're getting. The same can happen on the receiving side, but in between there's public internet. There might be bottlenecks. So there's other technology out there that offers packet resending, forward error correction, whatever. But if there is a bottleneck and you're trying to send 10 megabits into it, and the bottleneck gets smaller, the only thing you can do is adapt the bit rate of the encoder, and that's exactly what we're doing. So I think when you want to do this, you need both an adaptive encoder and kind of an error correction to go public internet. And that's how we do it over long distance, even from Brazil into Europe. These are partners, teleports. So we have a system at SCS. We can have streams on the media broadcast platform into the NGN. So that's what we're doing. In addition, there's technology that allows us to send a stream over public internet into the SCS, receiving on IP1. On IP2, that's my second Ethernet connector, I can output as a multicast to the local area network NOC, Network Operations Center of SES Astra. So unicast coming in, multicast going out. That is even operated redundant. Let me quickly switch over to this, and that is SES Live. That's how it looks. That's our Intinor Stream Statistics ISS. And you see 0, 0, 0. That means no alarms, no packet loss, nothing. So this is how we monitor internet connections. If something goes wrong, end of stream detected, or no SDI input, whatever can happen, I will be notified by email. I will have an SMS on my smartphone, even on the weekend, and I can look into it. And the system will even tell me, no SDI input, no stream. Well, then I know who to call. So that's how it looks like. So I go back to my presentation. That's an example for media broadcast. We've seen the example for Perl. The backup for Perl was done over KA-SAT. And KA-SAT actually operates in 5 carrier levels, which correspond to 10, 9, 8, 6, and 4 megabits. And I think we have the one and only encoder in the world that actually is able to kind of read out the Viasat modem. So we have partnerships with SkyLogic. They allowed us to read out the Viasat modem so we understand the carriers. And based on the carriers, you can see there's a little graphic representation on how stable the bitrate is produced. When the carrier drops, we go to that target bitrate for the carrier immediately. You will see other adaptive systems have some ramping. They need to learn where the ceiling is when you hit with your head on the ceiling. So you have to kind of ramp up. We don't do that. We have no ramping. We've seen competitors drop to 300 kilobits and ramp up again. That means you have a 30-second, 40-second phase until you're back at 2 megabit, which I would say, that you can call a picture. Before that, it's pure artifacts. So at least for KA-SAT, we can say we have a special solution, and that understands the Viasat modem. Okay, so that's the same technology, 19-inch rack mount, 2 SDI inputs, more horsepower, talk back. And here's something, the drive router can be hosted in a data center. So what I'm actually doing is I'm pulling the stream from Sweden down onto this smartphone. So some people use it like a streaming platform. You might have 400 streams, like the 2 megabit stream we're creating right now. So you can pull that. That for the esports people is interesting again because all the takers need to pull. In addition, it means if we're going to send a decoder out there, I don't have to discuss any IT issues, no port forwardings, nothing. It's on DHCP, it pulls the stream from the platform because going out to the internet normally is allowed. So we make it really easy by allowing to pull the stream instead of pushing. Yep. So that's another one. That's actually how we produce right now. So you see, I have my representation of the mixer, my encoder. I have 2 sources. One is my camera 1, camera 2. In this case, we just have 1 camera, but we have my laptop. And that can be bonded, whatever. The IP connection doesn't matter, but it's an example on how I can mix. So let me stop that for a second again and go back. And I see that's my mixer. So I see 2 inputs. I can use the keypad. You might have seen it, this one. So I can press SDI. I have my input. I go back to HDMI. All local mix. I can say, well, that's my presentation, but I want to see myself in the lower left-hand side. That's a picture-in-picture. Now I do the same thing. I go back to SDI source, and I have my lower right-hand side picture-in-picture. So that was clicking on the software. So that means you can have that remotely. Less people on site and still produce remotely. So that is interesting for some customers doing, let's say, lower budget sports like beach volleyball or something, where the budget just doesn't exist to send an SNG and have 3 people on site. So that's what we do. Let me switch back to my PowerPoint, and I'm almost finished. That is more on the direct router, because we cannot just have IP streams coming in, and that's 6, 12, 18, and even more. But we can also have the same mixing capabilities on IP level. We can have a talkback, communication, the intercom. We can have the multi-view. That's important, which is now available on HDMI. We can output on 1, 2, 4, and 8 SD outputs. So that's kind of the hub to receive all the streams. It could even be somebody else's encoder. That's the direct router. That's the ISS management. We've used it all the time. And just switching back to this, you see, all is green, nothing is wrong, all is showing up. That is ITV Family TV on the SAS Astra platform. If there are issues, you will see it. You will see errors, many errors. Red is really bad. You will see breakups, freezes. But at least the system will tell you there might be a clock source drift. So that means the encoder is not producing a very stable clock source, which might result in a freeze or frame drop on the receiver. So you can go back to your customer and say, hey, you need a better clocking on your encoder maybe, or even better, maybe use Intinor in the future. In addition, it shows you packet loss, buffer underruns, etc. So it helps us really to understand what the network looks like and kind of a debug for the customer. So that's kind of ISS with the complete 24/7 management, whatever there is. A fan failed, I know. End of stream detected, I know. No SDI input, we know. Temperature getting too high, we know. Everything. It's just a long list of things you can pick to be notified, whatever needs to be solved, escalated in a 24/7 environment. Yeah, so going back to the PowerPoint, almost finished. That's me. Thank you very much. And I hope you have some questions, and I'd be happy to answer these. So thank you so much.
Actually, I have a question.
Yep.
As you mentioned, you support contribution links, what you call takers. Do they compose the contributed content to a final picture, or do they take it as it comes?
They take the clean feed normally, and then that was an example would be a customer in the Ukraine. He's producing the live event in the Ukraine, but there was a Polish company that wanted to use the clean feed and bring it back into web streaming and TV. So the stream went from the event to a Frankfurt CDN. We've been pulling from Frankfurt, from the CDN as RTMP. We send it over to our data center, and the guys in Poland could actually pull it and then do whatever they need to do. Normally that is a different language, that is a different program they create, so they use the clean feeds normally. But for some customers in horse racing, the clean feeds can look different. Some have race statistics, graphics included, which they use locally. Internationally, they might use some race statistics, but not have the advertisement. So there's different clean feeds here and there. But normally it's clean, and we can easily do that. We have 8, with the 19-inch, we have 8 stereo, and with this, we have actually 4 stereo audio pairs you can use for that. And that differentiates us again from the other backpack, which is normally stereo. And we can do more for these international feeds. Thank you.
What is the reason why they're using TCP? Because usually in contribution they're using UDP as transport. Because
it's actually good you mentioned. I should have mentioned it. I missed. It's yes. We use UDP bonding. That's how we call it. And there's an underlying RTP with forward error correction on the low latency. I should have mentioned it. I forgot it. I'm sorry. You're perfectly right. Yes. That brings me down to 1.5 seconds over KA-SAT, which is within the ARD specification for low latency. Going one way in a way like when you go for webcast in the end, latency normally doesn't matter too much. Yes, and then the packet resending of TCP is kind of interesting because depending on the buffers you can increase. You have more time to resend lost packets, which in an RTP forward error correction you add like 20% on top, maybe 30, and then you have an extra 300, 400, depending on the settings, added latency to the stream. Yes. So there's actually two ways to be adaptive when using Intinor. But in terms of what we discussed today, have a very stable teleport uplinking. The TCP is the preferred way to go. When it's live news contribution, it's actually UDP bonding / RTP and forward error correction in an, again, adaptive way. That's what we do, exactly, yeah. So Red Bull is using UDP bonding adaptive. We have to be below 2 seconds. Thank you very much. It was a very good point.
Okay, so thank you very much from my side, Martin Weber from Intinor. That brings us to the last speaker of the part 2. Welcome Helmut Jung from Metis. And Helmut Jung